Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Special Education News and Noteworthy, the podcast where we break down the latest news impacting special education across the country and talk about what it means for students, families, educators, and advocates. I'm Paige Fitzgerald.
And I'm Kate McGaldy.
Before we jump in, if you're enjoying the podcast, we'd really appreciate it if you'd follow the show wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a 5-star rating. It helps more families discover these conversations and supports our mission of making special education information more accessible.
So this week, we're discussing educators' biggest concerns heading into the new year, a Senate vote involving federal oversight of special education, an important due process case out of Texas, and an exciting new transition program for students with disabilities, and a conversation about improving transportation options for special education students. So let's get started.
Our first story comes from Education Week. A new survey of more than 1,000 teachers and school leaders found that student behavior remains educators' biggest concern heading into the new school year, with 75% identifying it as a major challenge. Student engagement followed closely behind at 70%, while many educators also cited budget uncertainty, staffing shortages, and student mental health as significant concerns. Many respondents said schools continue to feel the lasting effects of the pandemic, increased screen time, and limited resources as they prepare to welcome students back this fall.
I love this article. I think this is a lot of teacher concerns heading into the new year. I think a lot of administrators are preparing for it themselves. I actually just posted about something similar on my LinkedIn page. What's really underneath it? What is like the underlying issue? Some of it might be communication. Some of it might be academic frustration or sensory needs, an overwhelmingness, a confidence issue. I think that really when we're talking about behavior, we have to figure out what that underlying issue is. Rule all those other things out before we can jump to saying, like, it's just a major behavior. Why is it happening? Does a child feel insecure about something? Does a child have something going on at home? Is a child struggling with an academic need that we need to put some more interventions into place? So this is really a passion of mine. So I enjoyed reading this article.
Yeah, and I think to your point, this is really good feedback for administrators if they're reading this article before their school year starts for what they can do to really curate their professional development for their teachers, because we're seeing loud and clear that teachers are saying we're worried about behavior in the school year. And basically what they're saying is we're worried about not having the tools in our toolbox to handle.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah, to handle.
Tools in the toolbox.
Yeah, to handle behaviors that these students, those with disabilities and those without might be showing throughout the school year, and also engagement. I always say I think that every teacher, as they're going through their formal training, should get some training in special education too, so that they know how to work with children that have different needs, because sometimes it's the need not being met that leads to the children exhibiting maladaptive behaviors.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that this is a really great time for this Education News Week to put this out, because it's so relevant, and hopefully it will inform the way that administrators are helping their teachers throughout the school year. I think I'm Kirtland.
Our second story comes from USA Today. A bipartisan Senate committee has voted in favor of legislation that would prevent the Trump administration from transferring federal oversight of special education from the U.S. Department of Education to the Department of Health and Human Services. While the proposal still has additional legislative steps before becoming law, lawmakers from both parties expressed concerns that moving the IDEA oversight away from the Department of Education could create uncertainty for schools, families, and students. For now, families should know that students' rights under IDEA remain unchanged regardless of these ongoing conversations and discussions.
So for me, this was the news article that I was like very excited to read about, because you're like, oh, thank God, we have our safeguards in place in our government, and they're trying to use them, because I think that this is something that parents, advocates, teachers, administrators have all been up in arms about. If this is not what we've asked for when we asked for you all improving special education. And so it's nice to see that our elected officials are listening to that and trying to do whatever is in their power to do. Because for a while they were like, guys, crickets, anybody? I felt like it was the mass is saying this is not what we wanted, and government just kind of being silent on it and pushing it. So great to see. We'll see
Yeah,
what
and
happens.
to piggyback what you just said, I think, for parents, don't panic. Continue to stay informed, know your rights, stay involved in the IEP process, and pay attention to what actually changes, and continue to ask questions because curiosity really leads to a better understanding and maybe some pushback with government officials if need be.
Okay.
Okay,
Our third story comes from KERA News in Texas. A lot of Texas stories lately.
I know.
A North Texas family's legal battle is drawing attention to one of IDEA's most important procedural safeguards, due process. Earlier this year, a hearing officer ruled that Weatherford ISD failed to provide a student with a free, appropriate public education and ordered the district to fund a year of residential placement as compensatory education. The district has appealed the decision, and the family says the ordered services have been delayed while the case moves through the courts. Advocates say the case highlights both the importance of due process protections and the challenges families can face even after receiving a favorable ruling.
hmm I mean, how often, Paige, have we been in advocacy meetings or not even advocacy meetings, meetings with parents before an advocacy meeting, and we're talking about, that they have the right to file due process, et cetera, et cetera. This family received a favorable ruling. The
Mhm.
district was found to have denied FAPE.
Mhm.
Compensatory education was ordered, but the family is still waiting. It just goes to show that, having rights and enforcing rights are two different things. I think, we always say so quickly you can file due process and due process is wonderful, but there's a lot of there's an emotional toll behind due process. There's time, money, resources, like a lot of emotional, I don't what am I trying to say? Like emotional insecurities throughout because it brings up a lot of things. There's a lot of waiting games. It's a scary process, but hopefully, these parents are going to get what they deserved in the first place.
Yeah, and I mean, it's unfortunate, and this is not even just a Texas issue, right? Like
No.
this is from state to state. You'll see this as well. It's just thinking of, while they have this ongoing legal battle, what is happening for the student? I know the parent was saying in the story that I
Mhm.
believe their son is 18 and they're like, right now they are bankrolling his placement and, and he has a temporary placement somewhere. And they're just thinking, okay, if this gets dragged out, right? If this
Right.
gets dragged
Right.
out year after year, what happens when he ages out of school then? What happens
Mhm.
if he's, 21 and then he ages out and what happens to all the compensatory education then? Do
Yeah.
is there no longer an obligation? So that's really what advocates are looking at because their worry is that schools, districts in the future will use this as a playbook. Like if we can drag it out, does that then, cancel out our obligation to this student if
Yeah.
they age out while we're kind of kicking the can legally down the road? So a lot of
Yeah.
people are watching this to see what the outcome is going to be. And it's really unfortunate that at the end of the day, like we said many times, to school districts, sometimes when your district is so big, especially, and you've never met this student, it really is for many jaded admin, like a name or a number on a piece of paper, and not really thinking about, okay, there's a child in this, right? There's a
Mhm.
student that's being
Mhm.
affected by all of this legal pushback that's happening. So,
A family that's been affected,
yeah,
it does. It trickles down from top to bottom, but also you said something powerful. It's like this family is paying for this out of pocket right now
yeah,
until the compensatory money is owed to them. But for the parents who are not able to do that,
okay.
that means the child would not have any education at that point. And that's scary in and of itself because then you're talking about like the owed time back to the child as well. Yeah, I think it's just a lot more complicated and, not all due processes are this complex.
Well,
A lot of parents do receive the answer that they were hoping for, but I think to understand that it is an emotional toll and it's a lengthy process and financially it can impact families in such a way. So, okay. Our fourth story comes from the Fort Worth Report. A former Arlington school is being transformed into a 24 million job training center designed to help students and young adults with disabilities prepare for employment and independent living. The center will offer vocational training, life skills instruction, and employment focused programs to help participants build the skills that they need after high school. Community leaders hope that the investment will create more opportunities for students with disabilities to successfully transition into adulthood and into the workforce.
this was one
Love
that
it.
was really, yeah, this was a fun one
We should have
to
ended with this one.
I Yeah, this was such a really great one because there's still big gaps in transition services that need to be
Mhm.
filled. So anything that we see that is going in the right direction is always really great to see, and I hope that other states follow their lead and use this, right? Like,
Yeah.
what great space because we do know that enrollment is declining in some districts and some are shutting down their schools, right?
Yeah.
Because of low enrollment. So what a wonderful way to take something that is not such a positive and turn it into a
Yeah.
positive by using this unused.
Repurpose it.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Repurpose it, and I think, having different opportunities for these individuals to have, increased independent opportunities, I just think it's a feel-good story, so I hope that other states, and areas where will find something similar to do in their own areas because I think it's needed, and it just gives them a sense of, like a safety net too, that it can all be done under one house and they can be practicing these independent skills. So, and thank you for everybody who is working on that transition, because I think it's something that a lot of parents I know firsthand many parents that I know of whose kids are in this transition space often they worry about, okay, now they don't have that safety net above them, and what does that look like for them moving forward? I have my own cousin, my aunt and uncle were really worried about my own cousin at one point, and my cousin's sister was in the special education field and took it on herself to create a transition program right in our town because she saw that there was such a need. So it's a needed space, and it's a safety net and just a feel good story for parents moving forward.
Absolutely. And actually, the next person in our 100 Voices on Special Education series, Rachel Souza, she has some experience in transition field. So that should be really interesting. We do actually talk about that, about what she feels is missing, what's going really well. So look
Awesome.
after that. That should be released sometime next week. All right. So our
Awesome.
final story this week comes from NJ Spotlight News. It is an opinion piece, which is why I put it as our last one. Even though it's not as much of an upper as the other story, it's a little bit different than the news that we usually put in here. So I thought I'd save it for the end. So this opinion,
Okay.
you're like, fine. I know.
Fine.
I was on the fence with that one. But this is an opinion piece encouraging schools to rethink how transportation is provided for students with disabilities. The author argues that districts should consider more flexible transportation options, such as parent mileage reimbursement, smaller vehicles, or other individualized solutions when they better meet a student's needs. The article also serves as a reminder that transportation can be considered a related service under IDEA when it's necessary for a student to access their education, making it an important part of many students' IEPs.
Yeah. Okay, I agree that this one should be last, because I think this is also it could be turning to like we could talk about this in a very positive light. I think in a nutshell, transportation it needs to be understood that transportation can affect a student's access to education. So it is imperative that parents have access to bring them to different therapy appointments. I can't tell you, my son was receiving speech services at a local facility in our town, and the amount of people that were waiting for either Uber rides or bus vouchers
Mhm.
just to get to and from. And it's something that many people overlook and don't understand that, this is a reality of so many people, and it's part of accessing in an appropriate way their education. So it's essential.
Yeah. And what I really liked about this was because I feel like when we think about transportation and when districts think about transportation, honestly, you're thinking about like the busing companies and things like
Yep.
that. And you're thinking
Mhm.
about the staffing for that because there are staffing shortages in that too sometimes. You're thinking about the funding for that because it's not inexpensive. And I just thought that this was just such a really beautiful and timely reminder as we start the beginning of the school year to think outside of the box sometimes and for
Mhm.
parents as well to be like, okay, let's think about other options. And they're not even, necessarily more or less expensive options. Some are less expensive, I'm sure, but just really thinking about what is really going to suit this child. Because I think most of the time when you talk about transportation, we talk about what's already available because there are so many
Yes.
logistics that
Mhm.
rightfully go into transporting children.
Mhm.
Whether that's having to keep a busing route under X amount of minutes right?
Mhm.
Having make sure like that bus is accessible for students that use wheelchairs, things like that. I think there are already so many logistics in it. It's just a really nice reminder that as as much as it plausibly can be individualized, to really focus on that student's need. And like I said before, just think outside of the box because you might find
Mhm.
something that's the right fit for that student that wasn't on the game plan for transportation that year, but could still be feasibly implemented.
Sure. Yep. I agree. Well, those are this week's top stories in special education. If you'd like to read more about any of the stories that we discussed today, be sure to check out this week's edition of the Special Education News and Noteworthy newsletter, where we've linked each of the original articles.
And if you're finding these conversations helpful, we'd really appreciate it if you'd follow the podcast wherever you listen and leave us a 5-star rating. It helps us reach more families, educators, and advocates who are navigating special education every day.
Thanks so much for spending part of your week with us. Until next time, stay hopeful, stay vocal, and take care of yourself.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.